Have you ever opened your phone for just a minute, only to look up and realize an hour has disappeared? Have you ever promised yourself that tonight would be different, that you would sleep earlier, focus longer, be stronger, and then felt your thumb move almost on its own? There is a level of distraction that feels harmless, almost innocent, until you notice it quietly eroding your focus, your discipline, and eventually your self-trust. This is not a story about weak willpower. It is about dopamine conditioning. It is about identity, and it is about three principles drawn from Japanese wisdom: Zanshin, which means remaining mind, the practice of sustained awareness; Kaizen, which means continuous small improvement; and Shoshin, which means beginner's mind. Most people try to fight scrolling with motivation, digital detox weekends, or bursts of guilt. They delete apps in frustration. They reinstall them days later. Nothing changes because the system never changed. Rewiring your brain requires something far less dramatic and far more uncomfortable. It requires learning to sit with the urge instead of obeying it. It requires watching the discomfort without anesthetizing it. That is the catch. Most people would rather scroll than feel. If this conversation feels personal, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you do not miss the next lesson. Like and share this video with someone who needs clarity, not just motivation. And in the comments, tell me the one goal your scrolling habit has been delaying. I read every comment, and your engagement helps this message reach others silently struggling. Now, back to the video. The night after that quiet realization, Arjun lay in bed at exactly 1:43 a.m., the room lit only by the pale blue glow of his screen. Outside his Toronto apartment window, traffic had thinned to the occasional hum. His phone rested inches from his face. His thumb kept moving. Up, pause, up again. He told himself he was staying informed. Design trends, tech news, industry updates. That was the story. But his unfinished client proposal sat open on his laptop across the room, a blank section blinking under the heading, User Flow Optimization. He had promised to complete it before midnight. Instead, he was trapped in a loop. Cue, a slight feeling of boredom. Scroll, reward something new, something unpredictable. Repeat. A neuroscientist at Stanford University, who has been studying dopamine behavior loops for 15 years, discovered that intermittent rewards create the strongest compulsive repetition. When the brain cannot predict the next payoff, it pulls harder. Social media is built on that principle. Variable rewards, endless novelty. Normal people say they lack discipline. Arjun told himself he lacked character. Each night felt like quiet evidence that he could not control his own mind. At 2:07 a.m., his eyes burned, his neck ached. He whispered to himself, just 5 more minutes. But 5 minutes never existed. There was only the next swipe. He was not choosing anymore. He was reacting. The worst part was not the lost sleep. It was the slow erosion of trust. Every broken promise to himself weakened something internal, something invisible but essential. He was not lazy. He was conditioned. And he did not yet understand the system that was shaping him. The next night was worse. Arjun sat at his small wooden desk at 11:52 p.m., staring at the unfinished proposal. He had made coffee at 9:30, convinced this would be the night he proved something to himself. By 12:40 a.m., the coffee was cold. By 1:18 a.m., he was no longer at the desk. He was back in bed, phone in hand. At 2:17 a.m., he glanced at the top corner of the screen. 2:17. The numbers felt heavier than usual. The proposal was untouched. His thumb was still moving. He did not even remember opening half the apps he was scrolling through. Something inside him tightened. Not dramatic, not explosive, just quiet and heavy. "I don't trust myself," he whispered into the dark. That was the real breaking point. Scrolling was not the true damage. The damage was identity erosion. Every time he promised to stop and didn't, he carved away a small piece of self-respect. A behavioral psychologist at University College London, who spent 12 years studying habit formation, discovered that identity alignment predicts habit persistence. When behavior contradicts self-image repeatedly, internal conflict grows. Normal people say, "Tomorrow I'll try harder." They rely on motivation. Arjun felt something colder than motivation. He felt shame, and beneath it, fear. What if this is who I am? He placed the phone face down on the mattress. The silence in the room felt loud. For the first time, he did not distract himself from the discomfort. He just stared at the ceiling, heart beating faster than it should at 2:17 in the morning. He was not exhausted from work. He was exhausted from losing to himself. The following Saturday, still carrying that quiet shame from 2:17 a.m., Arjun wandered into a small Japanese tea shop on Queen Street. He had passed it dozens of times but never entered. The interior was simple. Wooden shelves, soft light, the faint ticking of clocks from a repair bench near the back. Behind the counter stood a man in his late 50s, steady hands working on a silver watch. His name was Kenji Sato, 58, Japanese-Canadian, craftsman. Arjun ordered tea and, almost reflexively, pulled out his phone while waiting. Kenji looked up briefly, not irritated, just observant. "Your attention," he said calmly, "does not belong to you." Arjun felt exposed. "It's just work stuff," he muttered. Kenji wiped his hands and stepped closer. "When something pulls you without permission, it owns you." He introduced a concept called zanshin, literal translation, remaining mind. In sword training, it means maintaining awareness even after a strike. Philosophically, it means sustained awareness after action. In modern life, it means awareness after the urge appears, not just before it. "You think the problem is scrolling," Kenji said. "The problem is unconscious reaction." Then his voice softened. "In my 30s, I lost my first business, gambling. I told myself I would stop after each loss. I did not stop. Compulsion feels like urgency, but it is only discomfort you are trying to escape." Arjun looked at him differently now. This was not preaching, it was confession. Trust formed in that quiet space between ticking clocks. For the first time, Arjun wondered if his problem was not weakness. Maybe it was awareness. Arjun returned to the tea shop 2 days later, still carrying Kenji's words in his mind. "Your attention does not belong to you." He felt that sentence in his chest each time he reached for his phone. Kenji did not greet him with philosophy. He handed him tea and said, "Tonight, do not stop scrolling." Arjun blinked. "What? Do not stop," Kenji repeated calmly. "Delay." He explained zanshin again. Literal translation, remaining mind. Deeper meaning, sustained awareness after an action begins. Not before, after. When the urge has already appeared, when your hand reaches for the phone. Kenji said, "Wait 60 seconds. Do nothing else. Just observe." That night at 11:38 p.m., Arjun felt the familiar pull. His chest tightened slightly. A whisper in his mind. "Just check for a minute." Instead of unlocking the screen, he placed the phone on his chest and stared at the ceiling. The first 10 seconds felt unbearable. His mind argued, "This is stupid. Just open it." He did not move. A neuroscience researcher at MIT who has been studying impulse control for 10 years discovered that mindful delay reduces activity in reactive neural pathways. When you pause, you weaken the automatic response loop. At 40 seconds, the urge shifted. It was no longer sharp. It felt like a wave losing momentum. Normal people delete apps in frustration. Arjun did not delete anything. He watched. At 60 seconds, he unlocked the phone intentionally, not automatically. For the first time, there was space between stimulus and response. He had not conquered the urge, but he had seen it rise and fall. The next week, Arjun returned to the tea shop with a quieter expression. He had practiced the 60-second pause every night, not perfectly, but consistently. The urges still came. They simply felt less invisible. Kenji listened, then introduced a second principle. Kaizen, he said. Literal translation, continuous improvement. Small change, not dramatic change. Arjun expected a strict rule, a full detox. Instead, Kenji shook his head. "You do not remove the mountain in one strike. You remove one stone." That night, Arjun did not aim to stop scrolling entirely. He reduced it by 10 minutes. He set a timer at 1:20 a.m. instead of 1:30. The next week, he moved it to 1:10. Then 1 o'clock, he placed his charger across the room so the phone could not live on his pillow. A habit researcher at the University of Tokyo, who has been studying behavior change for 18 years, discovered that incremental habit shifts outperform drastic overhauls. The brain resists extreme change. It adapts to gradual design. Normal people attempt digital detox weekends. They announce it publicly. By Monday, the apps are back. Arjun did not announce anything. He adjusted quietly. The 10-minute reductions felt almost insignificant. But something deeper was shifting. He was no longer fighting himself. He was designing his environment. At 12:58 a.m., when the timer chimed softly, he did not negotiate. He placed the phone on the desk. No drama. No anger. He was not trying to be disciplined. He was becoming someone who protects his attention. For 3 weeks the pattern held. The timer moved earlier. The charger stayed across the room. The 60-second pause became natural. Arjun felt steadier, almost proud in a quiet way. Then the client crisis arrived. A major redesign project collapsed 2 days before launch. Emails flooded his inbox. Slack notifications multiplied. By Thursday night, his mind was tight with anxiety. At 11:04 p.m., he told himself he deserved a short break. 6 hours later, it was 5:12 a.m. He had scrolled through videos he barely remembered. His eyes were dry. His chest felt hollow. The timer had been ignored. The charger across the room meant nothing. The old loop returned with full force. Shame rushed in immediately. See, you were pretending. This is who you are. The next afternoon, exhausted, he told Kenji what happened. Kenji nodded slowly. "Tharabi-sabi," he said. Literal translation: beauty in imperfection. Deeper meaning: growth includes visible flaws. Nothing alive is perfectly straight. You think relapse means failure, Kenji continued. It means you found the edge of your conditioning. Normal people relapse and say, "I knew I couldn't change." They collapse the entire effort into one mistake. Arjun sat silently and asked a different question. What triggered it? They traced it back. Anxiety, avoidance, mental fatigue. A neuropsychology researcher at Harvard University, who has been studying reward systems for 20 years, discovered that stress increases the brain's craving for quick dopamine relief. The scrolling was not random, it was coping. Arjun did not defend himself. He did not dramatize. He observed. He was not perfect. He was practicing. The morning after admitting his relapse, Arjun did not feel defeated. He felt curious. That shift alone surprised him. Wabi-sabi still echoed in his mind. Imperfection was not the end of the path. It was part of it. When he returned to the tea shop, Kenji introduced the next principle. Shoshin, he said. Literal translation: beginner's mind. To see something as if for the first time. Arjun frowned slightly. I've been dealing with this for years. That is why you cannot see it clearly, Kenji replied. You are looking through labels. Shoshin meant approaching an old problem without the weight of identity. Not as an addict, not as a failure, simply as an observer. That evening at 10:46 p.m., when the urge to scroll appeared, Arjun did not think, "Here we go again." Instead, he asked quietly, "What is happening right now?" He noticed tightness in his shoulders. He noticed an unfinished email draft. He noticed the subtle discomfort of not knowing how to respond to criticism from his client. A behavioral science researcher at UCLA who has been studying cognitive reframing for 14 years discovered that curiosity reduces defensive resistance in the brain. When you become curious, you stop attacking yourself. Normal people judge themselves harshly. They say, "I have no discipline." Arjun observed. The urge did not feel like an enemy anymore. It felt like information. He wrote down the time, the emotion, the trigger. He was not fighting his mind. He was studying it. Judgment softened. Awareness deepened. And for the first time, he felt in control without forcing control. Weeks turned into months. The practices no longer felt experimental. They felt normal. The 60-second pause happened almost automatically. The timer moved earlier without negotiation. The charger remained across the room, untouched by impulse. Arjun noticed something subtle. He no longer argued with himself at night. At 11:30 p.m., when he placed the phone on the desk, there was no internal debate. He simply did it. The action felt aligned with who he was becoming. He structured his environment intentionally. Notifications were turned off except for essential work calls. Social media was allowed only between 6 o'clock and 6:30 p.m. He did not rely on mood. He relied on design. A cognitive psychology researcher at the University of British Columbia, who has been studying attention control for 16 years, discovered that environment design reduces decision fatigue and increases behavioral consistency. When friction is added to distraction, focus becomes easier. Normal people wait to feel motivated before acting. Arjun no longer needed to feel ready. He protected his attention the way others protect their savings. At work, colleagues noticed. In meetings, he no longer glanced at his phone under the table. He listened fully. He responded thoughtfully. His side business proposal, once delayed for months, launched quietly one Tuesday afternoon at 3:14 p.m. He did not celebrate loudly. The satisfaction was internal. He had stopped trying to focus. He was becoming someone who values attention. Rewiring did not feel dramatic. It felt steady, and steady was enough. One evening, months into this steady transformation, Arjun sat across from his younger sister at a small restaurant near the waterfront. The sun was setting behind the skyline, casting long orange reflections across the lake. His phone rested face down beside his plate. Halfway through the conversation, she paused and looked at him carefully. "You actually listen now," she said. The words were simple, but they landed deeply. In the past, he would have nodded while half scrolling under the table. He would have missed details, missed tone, missed presence. Now he maintained eye contact. He asked follow-up questions. He noticed subtle shifts in her voice. He realized something important in that moment. Phone addiction had never been only about productivity. It had been about presence. Later that week at the tea shop, he shared this with Kenji. Kenji nodded. "You cannot build a meaningful life with a fragmented mind." The sentence settled quietly between them. Normal people obsess over battery percentage. They carry portable chargers. They protect the device. Arjun had learned to protect something far more fragile: cognitive bandwidth. He still used his phone. He still scrolled occasionally, but it no longer owned him. The pause came naturally. The limits felt effortless. A behavioral neuroscience researcher at McGill University, who has been studying attention restoration for 17 years, discovered that sustained attention improves when interruptions are consciously limited over time. This was no longer about fighting an urge. It was about becoming present. The change was visible, not dramatic, but undeniable, and it began with awareness. Months after that quiet dinner by the water, Arjun sat once more in the tea shop, the soft ticking of watches surrounding him. Nothing dramatic had happened. No viral success. No overnight transformation. Just steady change. And that was the point. Kenji summarized the system one final time. Zanshin means remaining mind. Awareness after the urge appears. You pause, you observe, you create space. Kaizen means continuous improvement. Small upgrades repeated daily reshape identity. Wabi-sabi means beauty in imperfection. Relapse is feedback, not failure. Shoshin means beginner's mind. Curiosity replaces judgment. Observation replaces shame. A neuropsychology researcher at Harvard University, who has been studying reward circuitry for 20 years, discovered that behavior changes most effectively when identity and environment shift together. That is what Arjun had done. He did not overpower his brain. He retrained it. Now ask yourself quietly, what emotion are you trying to escape when you scroll? Who would you become if you protected your attention every single day? What is one small Kaizen step you can take tonight, even if it is just a 60-second pause? You are not weak. You are using the wrong system. If this resonated, write in the comments the first small step you will take. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you continue walking this path with us. Watch the next lesson on building discipline through identity, because attention is only the beginning. Be present, walk with honor, follow the path.